On today's episode of Survival Dispatch News, we're discussing Bill Gates and his unwanted intervention in the global food supply chain.
Hey guys, today's video is sponsored by TASER Self-Defense. Full disclosure here, TASER did not pay us to feature their product in today's video. They did, however, send us this TASER Pulse device. As a former law enforcement officer and certified TASER self-defense instructor, I'm really excited to tell you about the TASER Pulse. This is a really effective, less lethal self-defense tool. It's designed to immobilize an attacker for up to 30 seconds. It's got a 15-foot range. I want to show you what these cartridges look like. It's got a 15-foot range. It uses the same technology trusted by law enforcement and was built with civilian self-protection in mind. Weighs in about a half a pound. And this is a really high-tech device. This is revolutionizing the self-defense market. It's legal in 49 states, and I can tell you right here in Florida, it doesn't even require a concealed carry license. The TASER Pulse comes with 2 of these cartridges, a battery pack. This particular package also comes with this awesome Blade Tech holster as well. It's got good retention. I've actually tested this holster. And the TASER Self-Defense Safe Escape Replacement Plan, which replaces your TASER if you ever have to use it in self-defense and leave it behind. Same thing the law enforcement guys use. Guys, check this out. You don't want to be on the receiving end of that. To learn more about less lethal devices like the TASER Pulse, just hit that link we've provided. And thanks for watching.
And we're back. And we're joined by Jason Sawyer once again today.
Hello.
Thanks for stepping in, Jason. We specifically asked Jason to kind of weigh in today because he has a lot of knowledge and an affinity for health and health-related topics. So a little bit of background to this before we open up the discussion. So in a former life, one of the hats that I wore was a product evangelist for Sun Microsystems, largest Unix vendor in the world. I was a subject matter expert in the field of Linux at the time, which was a very nascent technology. That's no longer the case. Linux is the most prevalent operating system in the entire world. Android is Linux-based. Google's entire business model is Linux-based. Any appliances that you have that are smart appliances are Linux-based, whether it be a TV, a refrigerator, a wireless access point, or anything in between. So a very ubiquitous operating system and significantly better than any junk that's ever come out of Microsoft. So when I was a product evangelist, I had a cadre of Microsofties who would follow me around and heckle me while I was delivering speeches at industry trade events. And it was actually a lot of fun because they didn't have the level of knowledge that I did, and it was fun sparring with them, and it was good entertainment for the people. And so at that point in time, Microsoft had been convicted under the Sherman antitrust laws for manipulating the PC community or industry. And I will connect this to the current food situation that we have quickly. Long story short is Microsoft went to all the OEMs and said, you're going to pay us $50 for every computer you ship out the door, personal computer, for a Microsoft Windows license. And if you don't do that, we're going to charge you $150 per unit that you ship that has our software, and the ones that you don't have our software, do whatever you want. So margins extremely tight in that world. Dell was working off 5 gross margins. You had Compaq, HP, so on and so forth. It's been a lot of consolidation because the margins were so low. And so that's illegal. You cannot manipulate the industry that way. And Bill Gates has an extremely long track record as an evil SOB. He is a piece of crap, full stop. He stole DOS. He peddled it to IBM. I could go down a very deep rabbit hole of all the laws that this guy has broken. He's been convicted of. He has been a blight on society from the get-go. So Bill Gates has taken it upon himself now to interfere in the food supply chain. So he's one of the largest owners, for example, of chicken ranches, chicken farms. He owns companies that make egg simulated products from Soylent, for example. And so he's also been one of the strong proponents of people, eating bugs and so on and so forth. Not a conspiracy theory. This is the truth. So we then have the whole, and I'm going to try and choose my words carefully here so that we don't get nuked by YouTube, but that stuff that people have been putting in their bodies to keep that, ailment at bay. There's a significant portion of the world who hasn't taken those injections. Africa is a prime example. And so Africa's death rate has been stable over the past few years. Industrialized countries with a larger number of people who've taken this bad medicine have seen tremendous increase in death rates, especially for younger people, 25, 35, 45 years old. We've got professional athletes dropping like flies, so on and so forth. So how does this relate to Bill Gates? So Bill Gates has taken it upon himself to start injecting animals in the food supply chain in Africa with this toxic substance to ward off what is nothing more than influenza. And that's how his plan is to get this toxic crap into people's bodies in Africa. And it's essentially a pilot program that he's going to try to roll out here in America. And there's all kinds of people who have ailments, heart disease and whatnot. If you take this stuff, you're good as dead. The guy is just downright evil. I won't use profanity, even though I want to. So you have this whole chain of things that Bill Gates is involved in. You have him buying up food producing ranches and farms. You have him interfering in the chicken feed industry, for crying out loud, where there's multiple instances of his products being fed to chickens. They stop laying eggs. Then people slowly been discovering that if they take them off that food and they put them on, table scraps or other food, all of a sudden they start producing eggs again. You have him pushing these genetically modified foods that cause all sorts of problems. So again, this is a really deep rabbit hole, Jason, that I could go down. And I really dislike Bill Gates as an individual. But since you're more of a subject matter expert on health than I am, what are your thoughts on this mess?
Yeah, so I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. Nutrition, a good, solid nutritional diet is a huge portion of being healthy, being fit. You can exercise all you want. You can be a workout fiend, but if you're not feeding your body with the appropriate nutrition, you're never going to see the results that you're looking for. And more likely, you're probably going to get injured because your body just can't repair itself very effectively. So the fact that we're slowly but steadily introducing the crap into our diets, even unknowingly, people are misled by all of the things out there by these people and it's infuriating because you get these things that say, for example, when the low fat, the no fat, zero sugars and all that stuff, zero sugar additives, all those lies that people are deceived by into thinking that they're eating healthy foods because these, why would these companies lie to them? Of course, it's a healthy food. It says right on the label. You're being deceived by this stuff, and it's killing our bodies slowly but surely. And people, even really, really young people, are dying of all of these horrible. They're developing diabetes at really, really young ages, and it's really, really sad. And they're just not. You'll never be who you were meant to become without proper nutrition. It's a fact.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
And I've got 15, 16 years on you. So I remember during the 80s when we were fed this line that, fat is evil, when we have to take fat out of Americans' diet.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, fat adds flavor. So when you take fat out of food, it tastes like crap. So what they do, they put sugar in everything. And there's a ton of studies that show that sugar lights up the cerebral cortex just like cocaine, highly addictive. And they did it on purpose. It was by design. And, all these things you just described, health ailments have exploded since then. And, my wife is big into this topic as well. And she said, there's a ton of food products here in America that are illegal in other countries.
I know.
There's a reason for
that. Yeah.
So what's especially disturbing for me, again, because there's an axe to grind on my part, is Bill Gates doing this stuff. Who elected Bill Gates, to ensure that we have toxic chemicals put in our body to, again, ward off the influenza, because that's all I'm going to call it, to, the average 20-year-old today has something like the same testosterone level as the average 70-year-old did in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's a direct result of the poisoning of our food system.
Yeah, you can see it in the young men today. They're
Yeah.
just soft and weak.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Bill Gates, getting back onto Bill Gates, he paints a picture of himself as this, this world philanthropist, where he wants to make the world a better place and save the children of Africa from starving, and that he's doing this all at a sacrifice. He's giving up so much to be able to help the world, and I don't believe it for a second. But I don't believe it for a second based on some of the things that you've just said, for example. But like I was watching one video where he was talking about a genetically modified maize, as he calls it, which I don't know why he calls it maize. It's corn.
I think there's a French translation there, if memory serves me right.
I think some people around the world call it that. But anyway, so he was calling it maize, which was irritating to me. But anyway, he was talking about this genetically modified corn that that produces this higher yield and is drought tolerant and all this stuff. But at what cost? What does that do to the overall environment, the overall all the plants around that are required? So basically, some of these plants require certain types of fertilizers and certain types of treatments to be able to be prosperous. And if you don't supply them with those certain types of fertilizers and those certain types of herbicides and pesticides and all of that, they won't grow at all. And if you follow the money, like you always say, if you follow the money trail, you see where it comes from. And if suddenly now that these genetically modified organisms, these GMO plants, are being introduced into the fields, they're eradicating the natural forms of corn. If you can say that there are those. Some people argue that the Native Americans did modifications to the corn from the very beginning, but what I'm getting at is that it's changing the environment. It's changing the plant life around the world. I've heard even crazy stuff about trees that produce more oxygen or absorb more carbon dioxide. So by genetically modifying these forests around the world to absorb more carbon dioxide, we are, decreasing the global warming effect. And to me, that's terrifying. Like, you're telling me that you think this is going to be a good for the environment, good for the world by creating these artificial forests that absorb more carbon dioxide. There's going to be negative effects of this stuff. There's going to be. You can't screw with something like that and expect there to not be consequences.
You're disrupting the natural order of things.
Yeah.
So a couple of quick comments back to the whole fat thing, for example, since you mentioned Native Americans. So prior to, Europeans coming to North America, Native Americans were pretty lean, and a significant portion of their diet was fat. I mean, they ate everything that they killed.
Sure.
And there was some element of natural sugars in corn and whatnot, but there was a significant portion of their diet was fat-based, and yet look how healthy they were. And it wasn't until we got here and started feeding them things like alcohol that are laden with sugars that, our types of health problems started happening in their community. Second thing is Bill Gates back on schedule, because he's truly an evil SOB. He's currently traveling around Australia in one of his jets. It's a $70 million jet. He has four of them, worth just under $200 million, that spews a ton of pollution into the atmosphere, railing against, global warming and climate change. And it took me a while to figure this out. Again, I've been around long enough that when this whole global warming bullshit started in the 80s, that I've seen firsthand, jerk offs like Al Gore saying the world's going to end in 1995 unless we do something global warming. And then it comes and goes. And AOC, another turnip brain like Joe Biden, spewing the same freaking garbage. And, at the end of the day, on this particular topic, the, lack of care and concern for the environment, this is global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it, is predicated on one thing and one thing only: convincing the entire world, the population of the entire world, that we have a common enemy. And in order to battle this common enemy, we have to have a one world order, one government worldwide. And, this 100% tied to this globalist agenda. And we are literally the firewall between globalism and freedom. If America falls, the whole rest of the world will fall. We're the only ones left who have any guns, so the system's much more fragile than people think it is. I mean, we can dive down this rabbit hole for a second, but at 1776, 3% of the population stood up to the King of England and said, we're not paying your taxes, no taxation, no representation, that sort of thing. And so if you translate that into modern day terms, there's somewhere maybe around 1.6 million-ish active duty military, maybe 800, 900,000 reservists, 700,000 law enforcement agents. Call it somewhere like 3.2 million people, for example. If you were to take 3% of our population, you're talking 11, 12 million people. Half of the people that I mentioned that, are government employees believe in the libertarian view like we do. The system would collapse overnight if people just stood up against all this bullshit, these woke agendas, the manipulation of our food, the manipulation of our political processes. I mean, who knows? We might get a slap on the wrist from YouTube from this. I'm trying to choose my word carefully, but I really feel we're approaching critical mass on this type of subject.
The really frustrating thing to me, probably the most frustrating thing, is that you just don't know what to believe, right? Before we did this talk, I was doing a little bit of just real quick research onto some of the things that Bill Gates has actually said, and I've watched the videos of him actually speaking. But then, you on the one of the very first things that pops up is the fact checkers. Independent fact checkers have proven that Gates didn't actually. Yeah. But then you can see the video of him actually saying the thing, and it's not taken out of context, and it's just it's hard for me to fathom that in the world people exist to do harm at the profit of themselves, to elevate themselves to a higher power of some sort. And because I just don't understand that, I can't relate to it. I don't. I think you and I are the same in that we want to see people be prosperous. We want people to be happy, and we want the best for the people around us. We don't want to see anyone struggling or suffering or starving or any of that stuff. And it's really difficult for me to relate at all to someone that desires that for their own profit and own gain. And so I find it, I'm skeptical at first, if I'm honest. I'm skeptical at first, if I'm honest, about all of the headlines saying Bill Gates is this evil, this evil empire. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is this evil empire out to destroy the world. And I'm hesitant to believe it because it's just so far outside of what I believe, of my values and beliefs, that I can't imagine someone really wanting that. Now I know the truth. I know that evil exists. I know it's a thing. It's just, man, it's a tough one.
Well, Bill Gates in particular has a very long and well-known and established history of doing evil things. He's as crooked as a dog's hind leg. Yeah. And the agendas that he's pushing are harmful to everybody in the world, but especially so to those of us in America. And, he wields tremendous power, was never elected by any of us. And he's doing some truly, crappy things. Sure. And a spotlight needs to be shone on him. Yeah.
And he's doing it under the guise of the clever disguise of saving the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. It's infuriating. It's crazy.
Intention drives everything. He has very nefarious goals out of all of this. In our household, we're deeply concerned on the topic of our food supply being poisoned further. It's bad enough that, so when I was a kid, I loved cornflakes, and they were made from corn. And today they're just made from chemical soup. And Cheese Whiz was made from cheese. 15, 20 years ago, there was a mass exodus of food scientists from major food companies because they disagreed vehemently with taking all the natural stuff out of the food and throwing this chemical soup in there, sort of thing. It's not getting better anytime soon. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse. If they try to get to those of us who, I'm not going to say it straight out, are purebloods and didn't, bite on the whole malarkey, to use a Joe Biden word, over this, these injections that shall remain unnamed. So they're going to try to get it to us through our food supply.
That's messed up. Yeah.
we have young people dropping like flies. And, the guy who invented that whole thing, that 4-letter word of what's in those injections, first name Robert, last name rhymes with Sloan. And he's been saying for years, don't put this stuff in your body. It'll wreck your immune system. And so it takes about 3 years, according to him, for that stuff to really damage your immune system. So we're on the cusp of seeing things happen more and more as far as like athletes dropping like flies. They're trying to normalize cardiac arrest for young people.
Totally normal. It happens all the time.
I saw an idiot on a video the other day ago who's an MD and everything saying, you know what? We just discovered that every year when there's a flu outbreak, that it's immediately followed by a tremendous number of strokes, and trying to say that this is the natural order of things. It's been going on for years, but we just discovered it now. And I'm thinking to myself, just another shill spewing complete and utter BS to keep the sheep in line to believe, oh, this has nothing to do with that crap that we told you had to put in your body. And it's just the natural order of things. Total BS and evil people behind this stuff. So anyway, do you have any other thoughts before we wrap up, Jason? Before I end up going off on a rant and getting us a strike?
No, and yeah, so basically the frustrating thing about that is this: if you can't trust the food supply, you're left to what? What are your options? Your options are to buy and store up as much as you possibly can now, while you can still somewhat trust it. Or grow and raise your own foodstuffs. And not everybody's in a position to do that. I mean, whether it be your location, whether it be your skill set, your physical abilities, your financial situation, not everybody can just, start their own farm and raise all the foodstuffs that they need. That's a scary thing too, because if you control the food, you control the people, and they know that.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's possible to insert these diabolical nastiness into people's foods, whether people know it or not, it's just, that is such a frustrating thing, because how do you fight that? What do you do? I mean, I'm doing everything I can to fight something like that, but even I don't produce 100% of my own food, not even close. Small communities you could potentially do, gather the people around you and a little bit here. So, you got a buddy that grows potatoes, and this person has chickens, and this person has cows, and whatever. And you can kind of food share that way. And I guess that's an option for us. And maybe we have to go back to a lifestyle like that, which is frustrating that you're forced into doing that.
Well, I appreciate you raising that topic. So, we've got some upcoming videos on Survival Dispatch reviews on things like grow tents, which are not very expensive. $60 for a 4 foot by 4 foot by 7 foot unit that you can put indoors, hydroponics, you put outside, depending on the climate, and growing some of your own fruits and vegetables. And then we're also imminently fixing to start a series of videos on freeze drying. It's the best way to preserve food and maintain the nutritional content. So we'll actually be shooting some content on that, by the way, this afternoon.
Today.
Say again?
I'm freeze drying some food today.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
And, so we're going to today, Cindy and I are going to do a video on assembling a freeze dryer. And then we're going to start freeze drying stuff and showing people how easy it is to do. The barrier to entry is the cost, which is fairly high. So it might be something where multiple friends or family chip in to get a freeze dryer. You're talking 25 plus year shelf life. When you freeze dry something, throw an O2 absorber in the bag, Mylar bag, and tuck it away for, a rainy day. So our choices are limited, but we still do have some choices. Probably like the biggest concern I have out of all of that is, let's say you go to Winn-Dixie, whatever, and you buy a meat product. Where'd the meat product come from? How much tampering has there been? So beyond just, injecting livestock with antibiotics and other drugs, this other 4-letter crap that Bill Gates is introducing into Africa, and just said straight up he's going to introduce it to our food supply here. How do you ensure that even what you're stockpiling and preserving isn't poison in the first place?
Right.
So, we are literally on the cusp of a global food crisis that we have never seen before. And if people expend the energy to actually go and look into this stuff instead of memorizing, regurgitating mainstream media bullshit talking points, you'll see that there's all kinds of stuff going on globally that's putting massive pressure on, the supply chain for food. So it's kind of like a double whammy. There's not going to be enough food to feed everybody, and the food that's widely available at the grocery, a significant portion of it is poisoned.
Yeah.
So
what are you going to do? Yeah. Take your pick, right?
Do your homework, and for crying out loud, they want to call people like us conspiracy theorists, but newsflash, every single thing that we've been talking about the past few years has been proven to be correct. Every last one of them. So you can call us conspiracy theorists all you want. I mean, if somebody's that dim-witted that they're going to continue to believe this mainstream media, I mean, we've discussed this on here before, where a news station is broadcasting XYZ, and you pull up another station and it's verbatim, word for word, and you put it into a collage all playing at the same time, and it sounds like the Borg, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So all right, well, we'll wrap up there. Appreciate you jumping in, Jason, and looking forward to seeing you towards the end of next week.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
See you, man.